This year marks the 50th anniversary of one of Great Britain's worst industrial accidents that changed attitudes towards process safety forever. Let's delve into the Flixborough disaster of 1974, one of Britain's worst ever industrial accidents. The Flixborough chemical plant, owned by Nypro UK, was located on flat land next to the River Trent, close to the village of Flixborough in North Lincolnshire, England. The larger town of Scunthorpe was approximately 2 miles away. The plant was a large site, covering some 60 acres in total. A chemical plant had been on the site since 1938, originally owned by a company called Nitrogen Fertilisers Limited, a subsidiary of Thysson's, and used to manufacture the fertiliser ammonium sulphate. In 1964, Nypro was formed, initially as a joint venture between Thysson's and the Dutch Coal Board, but by the time of the accident, the Great Britain National Coal Board had also come on board, and the Dutch Coal Board had acquired Thysson's share. The chemical plant was reconfigured to produce caprolactam, one of the basic raw ingredients used for the production of nylon, and was the only plant in the United Kingdom to produce the material. The first stage of the process was the production of cyclohexane, which was produced by the oxidation of cyclohexane, a highly flammable material in both liquid and vapour form. The cyclohexane was heated to about 155 degrees centigrade before passing into a series of 6 reactors. The 6 reactors were each placed slightly lower than the next to make use of gravity to assist with the flow of product through the reactors. The reactors were constructed from mild steel with a stainless steel lining, and when operating, they held in total about 145 tonnes of flammable liquid and a working pressure of 125 pounds a square inch. The reactors were located in Section 25, which was located close to occupied buildings including the main office, laboratories and the control room. On 27th of March 1974, cyclohexane was discovered to be leaking from Reactor 5, and the plant was shut down and depressurised. The leak was found to be coming from a 6 feet long crack. A decision was made to remove Reactor 5 for further inspection and repair, and bypass the reactor. A bypass pipe was hastily constructed to connect reactors 4 and 6. The nozzles on the 2 reactors were 28-inch in diameter, but the only pipe available was a 20-inch pipe, which was used to create the bypass and included a dog leg and bellows. While some simple calculations were conducted to determine that this pipe could take the working pressure and flow in the reactors, no calculations or allowance was made about the complicated geometry of the construction. No checks were made by a qualified engineer to the relevant British standard to check for the thrust on the dogleg section, which would cause the pipe to buckle. The pipe section was leak tested with nitrogen, but not pressure tested to 1.3 times the operating pressure, which was standard at that time. Such a test is likely to have failed the pipework, and the incident would have been averted. The plant was brought back on stream on 1st of April 1974 and ran with no problems until 29th of May. The plant was shut down for a couple of days. Then on 1st of June, the plant was brought back online again. The reaction ramped up gradually until, at about 4:53 p.m, a massive explosion occurred, which could be felt for miles around. It was later estimated that it had the equivalent force of 15 to 45 tonnes of TNT, making it the largest peacetime explosion in the United Kingdom at that time, a record that has only been exceeded by the Buncefield explosion in 2005. The explosion devastated the chemical plant and also extended to nearby settlements. Of the nearby villages, 72 of 79 houses in Flixborough were damaged, 73 of 77 houses in Amcots, 644 of the 756 houses in the larger village of Burton upon Stafer, and even 786 houses in the town of Scunthorpe 2 miles away were damaged. But more seriously, the explosion also killed 28 people and seriously injured 36 more, of the 72 people who were on site at the time. The casualty figures could have been much higher if the explosion had occurred on a weekday, when the main office area would also have been occupied. 18 of the fatalities occurred in the control room as a result of the windows shattering and the collapse of the roof. No one escaped from that control room. Fortuitously, the occupants of the site's laboratory had seen the release when it started and evacuated the building before the gas cloud ignited. Most of them survived the blast. There were also 53 people injured off-site in the nearby villages. It took the emergency services 10 days to bring the fires under control. Once the site had been made safe, the investigators were able to move into the site to conduct their investigations. They were met with scenes of devastation. It quickly became apparent that the source of the explosion was centred on the Section 25A module, and a court of inquiry was established to determine the cause of the accident, led by the QC Sir Roger Parker. The inquiry examined two potential sources of the release which led to the massive explosion. One potential hypothesis centred around a 50-inch split in an 8-inch stainless steel pipe joining separators S2538 and S2539. But the Court of Inquiry dismissed this theory in favour of the much more likely failure of the 20-inch bypass pipework between reactors 4 and 6. The 20-inch pipework with bellows at each end had been torn away from reactors 4 and 6 and found on the plinth below the reactors. The nozzles on reactors 4 and 6 were open-ended, which would have allowed a large release consistent with that required to generate such a large explosion. The epicentre of the explosion was estimated to have occurred northwest of Section 25, where the hydrogen plant was situated. The inquiry concluded that no one appreciated that the pressurised assembly would be subject to a turning moment imposing shear forces on the bellows for which they are not designed. Nor did anyone appreciate that the hydraulic thrust on the bellows, some 38 tons at working pressure, would tend to make the pipe buckle at the mitre joints. As one contemporary campaigner on process safety wrote following the accident, the shock waves rattled the confidence of every chemical engineer in the country. The accident highlighted the major accident potential of chemical plants. It also highlighted the importance of proper management of change processes and procedures. Major hazards regulation changed considerably over the following years. Flixborough, along with other European accidents such as the Seveso disaster in 1976, which triggered the European Union Seveso Directive in 1982, led to better regulations, and ultimately to the Control of Major Accident Hazards Regulations, or COMA, in Great Britain. There is also better scrutiny of the siting and location of both buildings on chemical plants, and of chemical plants themselves away from population centres. 1974 was also a groundbreaking year for other health and safety legislation, as the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 was introduced in Great Britain. And since its introduction, it has made Britain one of the safest countries in the world to work in. The plant was rebuilt after the accident, using a modified process, but only ran for several years after the accident, and eventually the whole site was demolished in 1981. 50 years later, there is no sign of the chemical plant, and the site is now home to an industrial estate. A memorial to those who died was erected in front of the offices at the rebuilt site in 1977. Cast in bronze, it showed mallards alighting on water. When the plant was closed, the statue was moved to the pond at the parish church in Flixborough, but during the early hours of New Year's Day in 1984, the sculpture was stolen. It has never been recovered, but the plinth it stood on, with a plaque listing all of those who died on that day, can still be found outside of the church. And there you have it, the story of the Flixborough disaster. If you found this video interesting, please like and subscribe, and hit that notification bell to hear about my future videos. And feel free to leave a comment on what you think about this accident below. Thank you very much for watching.